Sign here, and the estate transfers entirely to us. You get nothing." Brandon slid the legal document across the polished mahogany table, his Rolex catching the afternoon light streaming through the law office windows. His smile was cold, calculated, the kind of expression that said he'd already won and was just enjoying the finale. Maya stared at the paper, her hands folded calmly in her lap. The document was thick, official-looking, stamped with the family lawyer's seal. Across from her sat her 3 siblings. Brandon, the eldest at 38, wearing his usual 3-piece suit like armor. Christine, 35, perfectly coiffed blonde hair and designer sunglasses pushed up on her head. And Tyler, 32, leaning back in his chair with that infuriating smirk he'd perfected since childhood. "My name is Maya Bennett. I'm 29 years old, and I'm sitting in this sterile conference room watching my siblings try to steal everything our father built. The irony? They're doing it with smiles on their faces, like they're doing me a favor." "Maya, sweetheart," Christine said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "You have to understand. Dad's will was very clear about bloodline inheritance. You're not actually family. Not really." The words landed like physical blows, each one designed to remind Maya of the one thing they'd never let her forget. She was adopted. "Mr. Patterson," Maya said, turning to the family lawyer, a thin man in his 60s who'd been avoiding her eyes since the meeting started. "Is this legal? Can they just rewrite my father's will?" Patterson cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Well, Miss Bennett, the situation is complex. Your siblings have presented documentation suggesting your adoption was never finalized properly. Technically speaking, you're not a Bennett," Brandon interrupted, his voice sharp. "You never were. Dad felt sorry for you, took you in when you were 7, but that doesn't make you entitled to his money." Maya had been adopted at 7 years old, pulled from the foster system by Robert Bennett, a self-made real estate mogul who'd built an empire from nothing. He'd seen something in that scared little girl at the orphanage, some spark of determination that reminded him of himself. He'd given her everything: a home, a family, his name, opportunities she never would have had otherwise. But his biological children? They'd hated her from day one. "Dad left everything to be split 4 ways," Maya said quietly, her voice steady despite the rage building in her chest. "That's what he told me. Equal shares." "That was before we found out about the adoption irregularities," Tyler chimed in, finally sitting up straight. "Turns out Dad never actually filed the final paperwork. Some clerical error or whatever. Point is, legally, you're not his daughter. You're just some kid he felt sorry for." The conference room fell silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. Maya looked around the table at these 3 people she'd grown up with, shared holidays with, called family for 22 years, and she saw nothing but greed and contempt staring back at her. Christine leaned forward, her perfectly manicured nails tapping the table. "Look, we're not heartless. We know Dad cared about you in his own way, so we're willing to give you something. 100,000? That's generous, considering you're not legally entitled to anything. 100,000, Maya repeated slowly, out of a $40 million estate. "Be grateful," Brandon snapped. "You came from nothing. You'd still be in foster care if it wasn't for our father. This money? It belongs to us. Blood family. People who actually share his DNA." Maya felt something inside her shift. She'd known they resented her. Known they saw her as an outsider, a charity case, someone who didn't belong. But hearing them say it so openly, so cruelly, watching them try to rob her of the inheritance her father had promised her, it awakened something cold and calculating in her chest. "Mr. Patterson," she said, her voice ice-cold now, "what happens if I refuse to sign?" The lawyer shifted uncomfortably. "Then your siblings will contest the will in court. Given the documentation they have about the adoption irregularities, I have to be honest with you, Miss Bennett. Your chances of winning are slim. The legal fees alone would bankrupt you, and you'd likely end up with nothing anyway. My professional advice? Take the settlement." Brandon stood up, buttoning his suit jacket with theatrical finality. "You have 48 hours to sign. After that, the offer drops to 50,000. And trust me, Maya, you don't want to fight us on this. We have resources you can't even imagine. Lawyers on retainer, connections in every courthouse in the state. You'll lose, and you'll lose badly." Christine grabbed her Hermes bag, throwing Maya one last pitying look. "This isn't personal. It's just business. You understand, right?" Tyler was already at the door, phone in hand, probably texting his girlfriend about his impending windfall. "See you at the house tomorrow for the estate sale," he called back. "Oh wait, I guess it's not your house anymore, is it?" The three of them filed out, their expensive shoes clicking against the marble floor, their voices echoing down the hallway as they discussed which properties to sell first, which investments to liquidate, how to divide their father's empire. Maya sat alone in that conference room, the unsigned document in front of her, silence pressing in from all sides. Mr. Patterson gathered his papers, avoiding her gaze. "I'm sorry, Miss Bennett," he mumbled. "I truly am. Your father was a good man. But the law is the law." He left, too, and Maya was alone. She should have been crying, should have been devastated, should have been calling her friends, her boyfriend, someone who could comfort her, tell her it would be okay. Instead, she smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible, but it was there. Because Brandon and Christine and Tyler had made one critical mistake. They assumed Maya was weak, assumed that because she came from nothing, she'd go back to nothing quietly, assumed she didn't have her own plans, her own resources, her own secrets. What her siblings didn't know was that Maya had spent the last 6 months working closely with their father, not just as his daughter, but as his confidant, his business partner, his trusted advisor. They didn't know about the private meetings, the late-night phone calls, the documents he'd shown her, the things he'd told her about their family's financial dealings. They didn't know about the safe deposit box. They didn't know about the second will. And they definitely didn't know that Maya Bennett, that charity case from the foster system, had learned everything she knew about business and ruthlessness from the best teacher possible. Their father. Maya stood up, smoothing down her simple black dress. She picked up the unsigned document and walked out of that conference room with her head held high. As she stepped into the elevator, she pulled out her phone and dialed a number she'd been saving for exactly this moment. "Ms. Rodriguez," she said when the call connected. "This is Maya Bennett. I'm ready to proceed with our discussion from last month. Yes, all of it. I want every document authenticated, every account verified, and I want it done quietly. They can't know until it's too late." She paused, listening. "No, they have no idea what's coming. They think they've won." As the elevator descended, Maya caught her reflection in the polished steel doors. The scared little girl from the foster system was gone. In her place stood someone harder, sharper, ready for war. If you're enjoying this story of betrayal and justice, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Because what Maya discovered in her father's final letter, what she's about to unleash on her greedy siblings, is something they'll never see coming. Her 3 siblings thought they were dividing $40 million between themselves. They had no idea they were about to lose everything. The next morning, Maya pulled up to the Bennett estate for what she knew would be the last time as a resident. The massive colonial mansion sat on 5 acres in Greenwich, Connecticut, its white columns gleaming in the early sunlight. She'd lived here for 22 years. Today, she was being evicted. 3 moving trucks were already parked in the circular driveway. Men in work uniforms carried furniture and boxes, directed by Christine, who stood on the front steps with a clipboard like she was conducting an orchestra. "Oh, good, you're here," Christine said, not looking up from her phone. "Your things are in those boxes by the garage. I had the staff pack them up. You're welcome." Maya walked past her without responding, heading straight for the room that had been hers since she was 7 years old. The door was already open. The space was empty, stripped bare except for the basic furniture that had come with the house. Her books, her photos, her personal belongings, everything that made it hers, was gone. "Looking for something?" Brandon appeared in the doorway, that same smug expression from yesterday plastered on his face. He was holding a framed photograph. Maya's photograph, the one of her and their father at her college graduation. Robert Bennett's arm around her shoulders, both of them grinning at the camera, proud and happy. "This is a nice picture," Brandon said, examining it like he was appraising art. "Dad looks good here. I think I'll keep it, for memories." "That's mine," Maya said quietly. "Actually, everything in this house belongs to the estate, which means it belongs to us now." He set the photo down on the empty dresser, face down. "But hey, if you sign that document, I might let you keep a few trinkets. Family heirlooms for the girl who isn't family. Poetic, right?" Maya's jaw clenched, but she said nothing. She'd learned long ago that Brandon fed on reactions, on seeing people hurt or angry or afraid. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction. Tyler appeared behind Brandon, eating an apple and surveying the empty room. "Man, this place is going to make a great home theater. Been wanting to renovate this wing anyway. Too many old memories." "Old memories of Dad actually caring about someone other than himself?" Maya asked, her voice sharp now. Tyler's casual demeanor cracked slightly. Dad was a businessman. He understood blood, loyalty, legacy. You were a tax write-off, a PR move. Look at the successful tycoon with a heart, adopting a poor orphan. It made him look good. The words stung because part of Maya had always wondered if they were true. Had her father loved her, or had she been convenient? Useful? A way to soften his image in the business world? But then she remembered the late nights in his study, just the two of them, when he'd taught her about real estate contracts and investment strategies. She remembered him at her high school graduation, tears in his eyes. She remembered last year, 3 months before he died, when he'd called her into his office and said words she'd never forget. "Maya, you're the only one of my children who has what it takes to run this empire. The others are parasites. They'll bleed it dry within 5 years. I need you to promise me something." She'd promised, and now it was time to deliver. "Daydreaming about your glory days?" Christine's voice cut through her memories. She stood in the doorway now, all 3 siblings blocking Maya's exit like predators surrounding prey. "You need to be out by noon. The new owners take possession next week." "You're selling the house?" Maya asked, genuinely surprised. "Already sold it," Brandon confirmed. $22 million. Got a great deal, considering the market. Buyer's some tech CEO from California. Wanted it furnished, so we kept most of Dad's stuff. Your stuff, however." He gestured toward the garage. Maya pushed past them, her shoulder brushing Brandon's expensive suit. She heard him laugh behind her. 48 hours, Maya. Sign the paper, take the money, disappear, or we bury you in legal fees until you're begging us for scraps." The boxes by the garage were a joke. 5 cardboard boxes containing 22 years of her life. She loaded them into her 10-year-old Honda Civic, the car she'd bought herself in college because she'd wanted to earn something on her own. Brandon and Tyler watched from the porch, drinking coffee and talking animatedly about vacation homes in the Hamptons. As Maya closed her trunk, Christine approached with an envelope. "Here," she said, her voice dropping to something almost resembling sympathy. "Your final check from the estate. Dad's lawyer insisted we give you something for services rendered, or whatever. It's $25,000. Consider it your severance package." Maya took the envelope without opening it. $25,000. Her father's estate was worth $40 million, and they were giving her $25,000 like she was a departing secretary. "You know what's funny?" Christine continued, leaning against Maya's car. "I actually felt bad for you when Dad first brought you home. This little scared kid who'd been through hell in foster care. I thought, okay, we'll be nice to her, make her feel welcome." "That lasted about a week," Maya said. "Yeah, well," Christine shrugged. "Dad started paying more attention to you than to us, his real children. You became his little project, his success story. Look what I built from nothing." Meanwhile, we got the scraps of his time and attention. So, forgive me if I'm not crying over you losing money you never deserved in the first place." She walked away before Maya could respond, her heels clicking against the cobblestone driveway. Maya sat in her car for a long moment, staring at the mansion that had been her home. She thought about 7-year-old Maya, arriving here with nothing but a garbage bag of clothes and a social worker's reassuring hand on her shoulder. She thought about teenage Maya, studying late into the night, determined to prove she belonged here, that she deserved the opportunities she'd been given. She thought about adult Maya, working alongside her father, learning the business, preparing for a future she thought was secure. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Package ready for pickup. Meet at the usual place, 2 p.m. R." Maya smiled. Everything was falling into place. She drove to a modest apartment in Stamford, a one-bedroom place she'd rented 3 months ago under a different name. Her siblings had no idea it existed. They assumed she'd be scrambling for housing, desperate, vulnerable. They didn't know she'd been preparing for this exact scenario since the day her father died. Inside the apartment, the walls were covered with documents, spreadsheets, photographs. It looked like a detective's murder board, red strings connecting different pieces of evidence, bank statements showing suspicious transfers, property deeds with forged signatures, email chains discussing shell companies and tax evasion, photographs of Brandon meeting with known criminals, Tyler gambling away company funds in Atlantic City, Christine funneling money to her cocaine dealer boyfriend. Maya had been collecting evidence for 6 months. Her father had taught her well. Never trust anyone completely, always have insurance, and never, ever underestimate your enemies. At 2 p.m., she met Rosa Martinez in a coffee shop downtown. Rosa was a private investigator, former FBI, with a reputation for discretion and results. She slid a thick manila folder across the table. "Everything you asked for," Rosa said quietly. "Authenticated copies of your adoption papers, showing it was finalized properly. Certificate from the county clerk's office. Sworn affidavits from the social worker who handled your case. Your siblings lied about the adoption being incomplete. Their lawyer knows it too." Maya opened the folder, scanning the documents. Perfect, airtight, irrefutable. "There's more," Rosa continued. "I traced the document they showed you yesterday. The one claiming your adoption wasn't finalized. It's a forgery. A good one, but a forgery. I can prove it came from a document mill in Jersey that Brandon's company has used before for real estate fraud." "Can you testify to that in court?" Maya asked. "Absolutely. But Maya, if you take this to trial, it's going to get ugly. They'll fight dirty. They'll try to destroy you." Maya closed the folder, her expression calm. "Let them try." That evening, back in her apartment, Maya finally allowed herself to feel the weight of what was happening. She sat on the floor, surrounded by her 5 boxes of belongings, and let the tears come. Not because she was scared or defeated, but because she was mourning. Mourning the family she thought she had. Mourning the siblings who'd chosen greed over love. Mourning the father who was gone, who couldn't protect her anymore from the monsters he'd raised. But grief was temporary. Maya wiped her eyes, stood up, and walked to her laptop. She had work to do. She opened an encrypted folder labeled Dad's Final Gift and read through the documents again. The second will, drafted 3 months before Robert Bennett died, explicitly leaving 60% of his estate to Maya and dividing the remaining 40% among his biological children. His reasoning was clear. "Maya is the only one with the integrity and intelligence to preserve what I've built. The others will destroy it for short-term gain." But there was more. Letters detailing every illegal thing Brandon, Christine, and Tyler had done using company resources. Recorded conversations where they discussed their plans to cut Maya out after his death. Evidence of embezzlement, fraud, bribery. Robert Bennett had known his biological children were corrupt, and he'd documented everything. He'd told Maya 3 months before he died. They're going to come for you when I'm gone. They'll try to take everything, but I'm giving you the tools to fight back. Use them wisely. Destroy them if you have to, but only if they force your hand." They'd forced her hand. Maya's phone rang. Her boyfriend, James, calling for the third time that day. She let it go to voicemail. He didn't know about any of this. Nobody did. That was intentional. The fewer people who knew what she was planning, the better. Another text came through, this time from Brandon. 36 hours left. Hope you're enjoying your new low-income lifestyle. You'll get used to it eventually. Some people are just meant to be poor." Maya stared at that message, her blood boiling. They really thought they'd broken her. Thought she was down and defeated, ready to accept whatever scraps they threw her way. What they didn't realize was that Maya had learned survival long before Robert Bennett adopted her. She'd learned it in foster homes where bigger kids stole your food. She'd learned it in group homes where you hid your valuables and slept with one eye open. She'd learned it in a system that taught you to fight smart, not hard, because fighting hard just got you hurt. Brandon, Christine, and Tyler had grown up privileged, protected, entitled. They'd never known real struggle, real hunger, real desperation. Maya had, and that made her dangerous in ways they couldn't comprehend. She pulled out her father's pocket watch, the one thing she'd managed to grab from his study before her siblings locked her out. On the back was an engraving. "Fortune favors the patient." Maya was about to prove just how patient she'd been. Maya sat across from Margaret Chen in a glass-walled office on the 40th floor of a Manhattan skyscraper. Margaret was a legend in estate law, known for demolishing fraudulent inheritance claims and burying corrupt families in legal precedent. She was 52, impeccably dressed, and had a reputation for taking on cases everyone else considered unwinnable. "Your siblings made a critical error," Margaret said, flipping through the documents Maya had provided. "They assumed you'd be intimidated by their threats. But fraudulent documentation, forged adoption records, this isn't just a civil matter anymore. This is criminal." "How long will it take?" Maya asked. "To build the case? 3 weeks, maybe 4? To destroy them completely?" Margaret smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. "That depends on how far you want to go. All the way," Maya said without hesitation. "I want them to lose everything they stole, everything they think they're entitled to. I want them to understand what it feels like to have nothing." Margaret leaned back in her leather chair, studying Maya with newfound respect. "Your father chose well. Most people in your position would take the settlement and disappear. You're choosing war." They made it war the moment they called me a charity case. Over the next 2 weeks, Maya's life became a carefully orchestrated double existence. On the surface, she appeared defeated, broken, exactly what her siblings expected. She moved into a modest studio apartment in Queens, took a job as a barista at a coffee shop, posted sad, vague messages on social media about starting over and finding myself. Her siblings ate it up. Christine posted a photo of herself at the Bennett Mansion's pool with the caption, "New beginnings deserve champagne celebrations." The comments from her friends were predictable. "Congratulations, you deserve it. So happy for you." Maya saw it and felt nothing but cold determination. Brandon sent her a text. "Saw you're working at Starbucks now. How the mighty have fallen. Dad would be so disappointed." Tyler was worse. He showed up at her coffee shop with 2 of his friends, ordered complicated drinks, and left a $1 tip. "That's generous, right?" he said loudly enough for other customers to hear. "Since you're used to getting handouts." Maya smiled, made his drink perfectly, and watched him leave. What Tyler didn't know was that one of his friends was actually a forensic accountant Maya had hired, wearing a wire, documenting every word. While her siblings celebrated their victory, Maya was building an empire of evidence. Margaret had connected her with a team of specialists, forensic accountants who traced every suspicious transaction, handwriting experts who analyzed the forged documents, private investigators who documented Brandon's meetings with questionable business partners. Rosa Martinez delivered another folder 3 days into the investigation. Your brother Brandon has been embezzling from the company for 2 years. Small amounts at first, then bigger chunks. He's funneled almost $3 million into offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. Can you prove it? Maya asked. Already did. Paper trail is airtight. He was careful, but not careful enough. Christine's scandal was even better. She'd been using company credit cards to fund a lifestyle far beyond what her trust fund allowed. Designer clothes, luxury vacations, a personal trainer who charged $500 per session. But the real discovery was her boyfriend Derek, a small-time drug dealer who'd convinced her to invest company money in a cryptocurrency scheme that was actually just money laundering. She's in deep, Rosa explained, showing Maya bank statements and text messages. If the FBI knew about this, she'd be facing federal charges. Tyler's downfall was almost too easy. He had a gambling problem, a serious one. He'd lost hundreds of thousands at casinos in Atlantic City and Las Vegas, all on company credit. When that wasn't enough, he'd started taking out loans using Bennett family properties as collateral, loans he had no intention of repaying. Maya compiled everything into 3 separate folders, one for each sibling. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable, career-ending. But she wasn't ready to use it yet. She needed the perfect moment, the perfect stage. Meanwhile, the 48-hour deadline came and went. Maya didn't sign the document. Brandon's response was immediate and vicious. He filed a lawsuit, claiming Maya had unlawfully occupied the Bennett estate and stolen property belonging to the family. It was complete fiction, but it made headlines. Adopted daughter accused of theft by prominent Connecticut family ran in the local papers. Maya's face was plastered across social media, with people she'd never met calling her ungrateful, a con artist, a fraud. Her old friends from the Connecticut social scene stopped returning her calls. Her college roommate unfriended her on Facebook. Even James, her boyfriend of 2 years, started asking uncomfortable questions. Maya, people are saying things about you, he said during an awkward dinner at her tiny apartment. They're saying you tried to steal from your family, that you're not really a Bennett, that your dad never actually adopted you legally. And you believe them? Maya asked quietly. James hesitated. That hesitation told her everything she needed to know. I think maybe you should just take whatever they're offering and move on, he said carefully. Fighting this is only going to make you look worse. You can't win against people like that. They have too much money, too much power. Maya set down her fork. I think you should leave. Maya, come on. I'm trying to help you. No, you're trying to convince me to quit. There's a difference. Please leave. He left. She never heard from him again. Later, she found out Christine had paid him $10,000 to convince Maya to give up. The betrayal should have hurt more than it did. Instead, it just made Maya's resolve stronger. By the end of week 2, Maya's preparation was nearly complete. Margaret had filed counter motions, sealed under court order, challenging the fraudulent adoption documents. She'd subpoenaed records from Brandon's offshore accounts, Christine's credit card statements, and Tyler's loan applications. She'd scheduled depositions, hired expert witnesses, and built a legal strategy designed to not just win, but to annihilate. They're going to come at you hard, Margaret warned during one of their strategy sessions. When they realize you're actually fighting back, they'll try to bury you in motions and delays. They'll attack your character, your past, everything. Are you ready for that? I've been ready my entire life, Maya said. But Margaret wasn't done. There's something else you should know. Your father's second will, the one leaving you 60% of the estate, I've authenticated it. It's legitimate, properly witnessed, filed with the probate court 3 days before he died. Your siblings either don't know it exists, or they're hoping it stays buried in the system. Maya felt her heart race. So I could win everything right now. Just present the second will and end this. You could, Margaret agreed, but I'd advise against it. Why? Because your siblings have committed multiple crimes in their attempt to defraud you. If you just present the will and walk away with your inheritance, they face no consequences. They tried to steal from you, destroy your reputation, ruin your life. Don't you want justice? Real justice? Maya thought about Brandon's smug face, Christine's fake sympathy, Tyler's casual cruelty. She thought about them selling her father's house, throwing away her belongings, publicly humiliating her. She thought about 22 years of being treated like an outsider in her own home. "What did you have in mind?" Maya asked. Margaret smiled that dangerous smile again. "We let them think they're winning. We let them get comfortable, arrogant, careless. We let them commit a few more crimes, dig their holes a little deeper. And then, at the perfect moment, we don't just defeat them in court. We destroy them completely, publicly, permanently." That night, Maya received a group text from her siblings. It was a photo of them at a high-end restaurant in Manhattan, champagne glasses raised, celebrating. The caption read, "To new beginnings and family that actually matters. Thanks for being smart enough to stay away, Maya. Saves us the trouble of kicking you out." Attached was a second photo. Her father's study, completely emptied. The desk where she'd learned about business, the chair where he'd sat during their late-night talks, the bookshelf filled with first editions he'd collected over decades. All gone, sold, or destroyed. Maya stared at that photo for a long time. Then she forwarded it to Margaret with a single message. "I'm ready. Let's end them." The pieces were in place. The evidence was compiled. The legal strategy was flawless. All that remained was timing. 3 days later, Brandon made his first major mistake. He announced on social media that he was selling Bennett Properties, the company their father had spent 40 years building, to a corporate conglomerate for $35 million. The sale was scheduled to close in 2 weeks. "This is it," Margaret told Maya when she saw the announcement. "If that sale goes through, recovering the assets becomes exponentially harder. We need to move now." "How fast can you file?" Maya asked. "I already have everything prepared. I can have it in front of a judge by tomorrow morning." Maya looked out the window of Margaret's office down at the city below. Somewhere out there, her 3 siblings were celebrating what they thought was their final victory, toasting to their success, counting money that was never theirs to begin with. What they didn't know was that tomorrow morning, their entire world was going to collapse. The lawsuits, the criminal referrals, the frozen accounts, the public exposure. Everything Maya and her team had been building in secret was about to explode into their lives like a bomb. Brandon had texted her just that morning. "By the way, we're having an estate sale this weekend, selling off Dad's remaining personal items. You're not invited, obviously, but thought you should know. Everything must go, including the trash." Maya read that message again, her jaw tight. The trash. That's what they thought of her, of their father's memory, of everything he'd tried to teach them about integrity and legacy. Her phone buzzed. Another message from Brandon. "Actually, you know what? You should come to the sale. Maybe you can afford to buy back some of your old stuff. We'll give you a family discount." Maya's fingers flew across her keyboard, typing a response she'd been saving for exactly this moment. "See you there." What Brandon didn't understand, what none of them understood, was that Maya hadn't been hiding in defeat these past 2 weeks. She'd been preparing for war. And tomorrow, that war was going to begin in a courtroom, with a judge's gavel, and with 3 siblings who were about to discover that the girl they dismissed as nothing was about to become their worst nightmare. The estate sale was scheduled for Saturday at 10 a.m. Maya arrived at 9:45, dressed in a simple black suit, her hair pulled back, looking nothing like the defeated woman her siblings expected. She wasn't alone. Margaret Chen walked beside her, carrying a leather briefcase. Behind them were 2 uniformed police officers and a man in a gray suit who introduced himself as Agent Morrison from the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. Brandon saw them first. He was standing near the front entrance, greeting potential buyers, playing the role of the gracious host selling off his late father's treasures. His smile vanished the moment he spotted Maya and her entourage. "What the hell is this?" he demanded, stepping forward. "Maya, you're not welcome here. I made that clear." "Actually," Margaret said, her voice carrying across the lawn, "my client has every right to be here. This is still legally part of the Bennett estate, and until probate is settled, you have no authority to sell anything." Christine appeared from inside the house, Tyler right behind her. Both stopped dead when they saw the police officers. "Brandon, what's going on?" Christine's voice was tight, nervous. "Who are these people?" "I'm Margaret Chen, Maya's attorney. These officers are here to serve you with several documents." She nodded, and one officer stepped forward, handing each sibling a thick envelope. "You're being sued for fraud, forgery, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit theft. The FBI is also opening a criminal investigation into your financial activities." The color drained from Brandon's face. "This is insane. You can't just show up here with accusations." "They're not accusations," Maya said, her voice calm and steady. "They're facts. Documented, verified, irrefutable facts." By now, the early arrivals for the estate sale had gathered, sensing drama. Neighbors, potential buyers, even a few reporters who'd heard about the prominent Connecticut family dispute stood watching. This was exactly what Maya wanted. Public exposure, no shadows to hide in, no quiet settlements, everything out in the open. Tyler ripped open his envelope, scanning the contents. "This says I embezzled money. That's a lie. I've never stolen anything from the company." "You took out $400,000 in unauthorized loans using company properties as collateral," Agent Morrison interjected. "We have the loan applications with your signature, the bank transfers, the casino surveillance footage of you gambling with those funds. Would you like to continue claiming it's a lie?" Tyler's hands were shaking now, the papers fluttering. "I was going to pay it back. It was temporary." "Embezzlement is embezzlement," Morrison said flatly. "Temporary or not." Christine turned on Maya, her perfect composure cracking. "You did this. You set us up. You bitter, vindictive—" "I documented your crimes," Maya interrupted. "There's a difference. You committed fraud. I just made sure everyone would know about it." Margaret pulled out a tablet, pulling up documents projected onto a portable screen one of her assistants had set up. "Let's go through this systematically, shall we? Brandon Bennett, you've been funneling company funds into offshore accounts for 2 years. $3 million to be exact. Here are the wire transfer records, the shell company documents with your signature, and recordings of you discussing these transactions with your financial advisor." She played an audio clip. Brandon's voice, clear and unmistakable. "Make sure none of this traces back to Bennett Properties. I don't need my father or the board asking questions. Keep it clean. Keep it offshore." Brandon's face went from pale to red. "That recording is illegal. You can't use that in court. Actually, your financial advisor was wearing a wire during that conversation, cooperating with federal investigators. Perfectly legal." Margaret smiled. "But please, continue digging your hole." She turned to Christine. "Ms. Bennett, you've been using company credit cards for personal expenses totaling over $800,000. Luxury goods, vacations, and payments to your boyfriend Derek Chen for what you claimed were consulting services. Mr. Chen is currently under investigation for drug trafficking and money laundering. The FBI believes you knowingly helped him clean illegal proceeds through company accounts." Christine's face crumpled. "I didn't know. Derek told me it was cryptocurrency investments. I didn't know he was laundering money." "Ignorance isn't a defense," Agent Morrison said, "especially when we have text messages where you discussed hiding the transactions from company auditors." Margaret displayed those texts on the screen. Christine's messages to Derek. "The auditors are getting suspicious. We need to stop for a while. Can you make it look more legitimate? My siblings might notice. If this gets traced back to me, I'm screwed." One of the neighbors gasped. A reporter was furiously typing on her phone. This was turning into a public execution, and Maya felt no remorse. They'd humiliated her, called her worthless, stolen her inheritance. Now they were getting exactly what they deserved. "And, Tyler," Margaret continued, "your gambling debts alone total $600,000. You've been using company assets as collateral without board authorization, forging your father's signature on loan documents, and making unauthorized withdrawals from estate accounts." Tyler looked at Brandon desperately. "You said this would work. You said she had nothing. You said the adoption paperwork was fake and we could just take everything." "Shut up," Brandon hissed. "Don't say another word." "Oh, that's the beautiful part," Margaret said. "The adoption paperwork isn't fake. Maya's adoption was finalized properly, completely legally. The documents you showed her were forgeries." She pulled out a folder, handing copies to the police officers. "We traced them to a document mill in New Jersey that your company, Brandon, has used before for real estate fraud. We have the paper trail, the payment records, everything." Brandon's lawyer, Patterson, had arrived and was frantically whispering in his ear. But it was too late. The damage was done, the evidence was overwhelming, and everyone was watching. "There's more," Maya said, and all three siblings turned to look at her. Dad knew. He knew about all of it. She pulled out a letter, her father's handwriting unmistakable. 3 months before he died, Dad drafted a second will. He left 60% of his estate to me and divided the remaining 40% between you three. He also left detailed documentation of every illegal thing you'd done using company resources." Brandon lunged forward, trying to grab the letter, but the police officers stepped in, holding him back. "That's impossible. We had Dad's will authenticated. The lawyer confirmed there was only one will." "Patterson confirmed what you paid him to confirm," Margaret said. "Unfortunately for you, he didn't know about the second will because your father filed it directly with the probate court 3 days before he died. It's legitimate, properly witnessed, and supersedes any previous documents." She displayed the will on the screen. Robert Bennett's signature, dated, witnessed by the family doctor and the company's CFO. His words were clear. "Maya has demonstrated the integrity and intelligence to preserve the Bennett legacy. My biological children have proven themselves to be corrupt, self-serving, and unworthy of the empire I built. I leave the majority of my estate to Maya, trusting her to use it wisely and ethically." Christine sank to her knees on the grass, sobbing. Tyler was staring at the will in disbelief, his face ashen. Brandon was the only one still trying to fight. "This is a setup," he shouted. "That will is fake. Patterson told us." "Patterson is currently being questioned by the State Bar Association for ethics violations," Margaret interrupted. "He was complicit in your fraud, accepted bribes to misrepresent the estate, and is likely to be disbarred. His testimony is worthless." Agent Morrison stepped forward. "Brandon Bennett, Christine Bennett, Tyler Bennett, you're being detained for questioning regarding multiple counts of fraud, embezzlement, forgery, and conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent." "No." Brandon's voice was desperate now, all his arrogance stripped away. "No, this isn't happening, Maya. Please, we can work this out. We'll split everything fairly. We'll give you your share. Just call off the investigation." Maya looked at the man who'd called her a charity case, who'd thrown away her belongings, who'd tried to erase her from the family. "You had 48 hours to do the right thing. You chose to destroy me instead. Now you get to live with the consequences." If you've ever wondered what real justice looks like, stick around. Because what happened next proved that sometimes karma doesn't need any help. It just needs the right person to document everything and bring it into the light. Christine grabbed Maya's arm, her perfectly manicured nails digging in. "Please, I have a daughter. What's going to happen to her if I go to prison?" Maya pulled her arm away. "You should have thought about that before you tried to steal my inheritance and ruin my life. Your daughter will be fine. She'll learn what happens when you choose greed over integrity." The police officers began leading the three siblings toward their vehicles. The crowd of onlookers had grown, phones out, recording everything. This would be all over social media within hours. The Bennett family scandal, exposed for everyone to see. Brandon turned back one last time. "You destroyed us. You destroyed your own family." "No," Maya said quietly. "You destroyed yourselves. I just made sure everyone knew about it." As the police cars drove away, Margaret turned to Maya. "The estate sale is canceled, obviously. The house, the assets, everything is frozen pending the criminal investigation and the probate hearing. But Maya, the second will is ironclad. Even with the criminal cases, you're going to inherit the majority of the estate. Your father made sure of that." Maya nodded, watching the crowd disperse, the reporters rushing to file their stories. She felt exhausted, drained, but also something else. Relief, vindication, justice. Rosa Martinez appeared beside her. "I've been monitoring their communications. Brandon's been trying to move money out of the country since yesterday. We caught it all. The prosecutors are going to have a field day with this case." "How long do you think they'll get?" Maya asked. "Brandon, 5 to 10 years probably. Christine might get less if she cooperates and testifies against the boyfriend. Tyler might cut a deal. But their reputations, their social standing, their business connections?" Rosa shook her head. "That's gone forever. No one in Connecticut high society is going to touch them after this." Margaret began packing up her equipment. There will be a probate hearing in 2 weeks. The judge will review both wills, the evidence of fraud, and make a final determination. "But honestly, Maya, it's over. You won." Maya looked up at the Bennett mansion, the home she'd been kicked out of just weeks ago. Soon it would be hers again, legally and completely. But standing here now, she realized something. She didn't want it anymore. This house was full of bad memories, toxic relationships, years of being made to feel less than. "I'm going to sell it," she said suddenly. "The house, everything. I'll start fresh, build something new, something that actually honors Dad's legacy, not just his money." Margaret smiled. That's exactly what he hoped you'd do. As they walked toward their cars, Maya's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You think you won. This isn't over. We have lawyers, resources, connections. You're going to regret this. B." Maya showed the text to Agent Morrison, who'd stayed behind to secure the property. He read it and sighed. Threatening a witness. He just added another charge to his list. These people really don't know when to stop, do they? "No," Maya said. "They don't. But that's what makes them predictable. And predictable people are easy to beat." She deleted the text and blocked the number. Brandon, Christine, and Tyler were no longer her problem. They were the justice system's problem now, and they were about to discover that money and connections couldn't save you from documented crimes and federal investigators. The sun was setting as Maya drove away from the Bennett estate for what she knew might be the last time. In her rearview mirror, she could see police tape being stretched across the entrance, officers securing the property, reporters still lingering for follow-up shots. Her phone rang. It was an old colleague from her father's company, someone who'd distanced himself when the scandal broke. "Maya, I just saw the news. I had no idea what your siblings were doing. Listen, the board wants to meet with you. We want to discuss the future of Bennett Properties. Your father always said you should be running the company, and after today, after seeing how you handled this, we think he was right." Maya smiled. "Set up the meeting. Let's talk about what Bennett Properties could become, what it should have been all along. Ethical, transparent, focused on building communities instead of just building wealth." "That's exactly what we need," he said. "Welcome back, Ms. Bennett." She hung up and kept driving, away from the mansion, away from the past, toward a future she was finally free to build on her own terms. Behind her, 3 siblings sat in separate police cars, their perfect lives crumbling, their arrogance shattered, their crimes exposed. They'd called her nothing, treated her like trash, tried to erase her from the family. and now they had nothing, while she had everything. 6 months later, Maya stood in a completely different kind of conference room. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Manhattan, the city sprawling beneath her like a promise of everything she'd fought for. The Bennett Properties Board sat around a modern glass table, and this time, Maya wasn't the one being dismissed. She was the one in charge. "The Riverside Development Project is approved," she announced, closing her laptop. "We break ground next month. Affordable housing, mixed income, with a community center and job training programs. Exactly what my father would have wanted." The board members nodded, taking notes. These were new faces, people Maya had carefully selected to replace the corrupt executives her siblings had installed. People who understood that building wealth didn't mean exploiting communities. After the meeting, Maya's assistant brought in her mail. Among the letters was one from the Connecticut Department of Corrections. She opened it, already knowing what it would say. Brandon had been sentenced to 8 years in federal prison for fraud, embezzlement, and money laundering. His assets had been seized, his reputation destroyed. The man who'd once owned a Rolex and a mansion now wore an orange jumpsuit and shared a cell with a convicted car thief. Christine had received 5 years and was currently in a minimum security facility, having testified against Derek in exchange for a reduced sentence. Her daughter was being raised by Christine's ex-husband, who'd won full custody after the scandal broke. The judge had been clear. A mother who steals and lies is not fit to raise a child who deserves better. Tyler had cut a deal, turning state's evidence against his siblings and their co-conspirators. He'd received 3 years probation and community service, but his gambling addiction had cost him everything else. Last Maya heard, he was living in a studio apartment in Newark, working as a sales clerk, his trust fund gone, his prospects non-existent. Patterson, the family lawyer who'd helped them forge documents, had been disbarred and was facing his own criminal charges. He'd tried to blame everything on Brandon, claiming he was just following orders, but the evidence showed he'd been an eager participant in the fraud. Maya set the letter down and walked to the window. The probate hearing had gone exactly as Margaret predicted. The second will was authenticated, upheld, and executed. Maya had inherited 60% of the estate, roughly $24 million after legal fees and taxes. Her siblings had split the remaining 40%, but most of that had been seized to pay restitution for their crimes. She'd sold the Bennett mansion within weeks of taking possession. A nice family from Boston had bought it, people with young children who would fill those empty rooms with laughter instead of resentment. Maya had kept a few meaningful items. Her father's pocket watch, some photographs, his favorite books. Everything else went to auction, with the proceeds donated to foster care organizations across Connecticut. With her inheritance, Maya had done exactly what she'd promised her father. She'd transformed Bennett Properties from a profit-driven real estate company into something that actually served communities. Affordable housing projects, small business loans for entrepreneurs from disadvantaged backgrounds, scholarship programs for kids aging out of foster care, kids like she'd once been. The company was more profitable than ever, but now that profit was being used to create opportunities instead of just accumulating wealth. Her father would have been proud. Maya's phone buzzed. A text from Rosa Martinez. "Saw the news about the Riverside project. Your dad would be thrilled. Coffee next week?" She smiled and replied, "Absolutely. My treat." Rosa had become more than just an investigator Maya had hired. She'd become a friend, one of the few people who'd stood by her when everyone else had believed the lies. Margaret Chen, too. They met for dinner once a month. 3 women who understood what it meant to fight against people who thought they were untouchable. That evening, Maya attended a fundraiser for a foster care advocacy group. She'd been asked to speak, to tell her story, to inspire other kids who'd grown up in the system. Standing at the podium, looking out at hundreds of faces, she felt that familiar nervousness that came before public speaking. But then she remembered who she'd been 6 months ago. Broke, humiliated, dismissed as nothing. And she remembered who she was now. "My name is Maya Bennett," she began. When I was 7 years old, I was adopted by a man who saw potential in a scared foster kid that nobody else wanted. He gave me a home, a family, opportunities I never could have imagined. But when he died, his biological children tried to take all of that away. They called me a charity case. They said I didn't deserve his name or his legacy. They tried to erase me. She paused, letting the silence settle. But here's what they didn't understand. You can't erase someone who refuses to disappear. You can't break someone who's already survived being broken. And you definitely can't beat someone who has nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. The audience was completely silent now, hanging on every word. My siblings are in prison now. Their assets are gone. Their reputation's destroyed. And people keep asking me if I feel guilty, if I regret what happened to them. The answer is no. I didn't destroy them. They destroyed themselves through their own greed and cruelty. I just made sure their crimes didn't stay hidden. She looked directly at the foster kids sitting in the front row, teenagers who'd been brought to hear her speak. If you take anything from my story, let it be this. Never let anyone convince you that you're less than. Never accept the role that other people try to force on you. And if someone tries to take what's rightfully yours, don't just fight back. Fight smart. Document everything. Build your case. And when the time is right, show them exactly who they underestimated. The applause was thunderous. Several people stood, then more, until the entire room was on its feet. Maya saw tears on some faces, fierce determination on others. These were people who understood what it meant to be dismissed, overlooked, told they didn't matter. After the speech, a teenage girl approached her nervously. She was maybe 15, with the same guarded expression Maya remembered wearing at that age. "Miss Bennett, I'm in foster care. Been in 8 different homes since I was 6, and everybody keeps telling me I should be grateful for whatever scraps people give me. But, listening to you tonight, maybe I don't have to accept that." Maya knelt down to her level. "What's your name?" "Jasmine." Maya smiled at the irony. Her sibling's mistress had been named Jasmine, too, a reminder of betrayal. But this Jasmine represented something different. Hope. A second chance. "Jasmine, you're going to face people who try to make you feel small. People who think that because you came from nothing, you deserved nothing. Prove them wrong. Study hard, work harder, and never, ever let anyone tell you what you're worth. Only you get to decide that." The girl nodded, wiping her eyes. "Did you really send your brothers and sister to prison?" "I didn't send them anywhere. They sent themselves through their own choices. I just made sure they faced consequences." Maya pulled out a business card. "This is my direct email. If you ever need advice, resources, or just someone to talk to who understands what it's like, reach out. You're not alone in this." Jasmine took the card like it was made of gold, clutching it tightly. "Thank you." Watching her walk away, Maya felt something shift inside her. This was why she'd fought so hard. Not just for herself, but for every kid who'd been told they didn't belong, who'd been treated as disposable, who'd been made to feel grateful just for existing. 3 weeks later, Maya received an email from Brandon. He'd found a way to send messages from prison, probably using another inmate's smuggled phone. The subject line read, "You destroyed everything." She almost deleted it without reading, but curiosity won. The email was long, rambling, full of accusations and self-pity. He blamed her for his imprisonment, for the family's downfall, for ruining lives. He called her vindictive, cruel, heartless. He said their father would be ashamed of what she'd become. Maya read it once, then composed her reply. It was short, only 3 sentences. "Dad knew exactly who you were, Brandon. That's why he left me in charge of his legacy instead of you. Enjoy prison." She hit send and blocked his email address. He was her past. She was done carrying him or his siblings in her thoughts. By the end of that first year, Bennett Properties had launched 5 new community development projects, created 200 affordable housing units, and provided business loans to 50 entrepreneurs from underrepresented backgrounds. The company was featured in Forbes, The Wall Street Journal, and Business Insider as an example of ethical capitalism done right. Maya was invited to speak at Harvard Business School, at TED conferences, at corporate leadership summits. She always accepted, always told her story, always emphasized the same message. Integrity matters more than profit, and the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's building something better than they ever could. On the anniversary of her father's death, Maya visited his grave alone. She brought flowers, the expensive kind he used to buy for her mother before she passed. She sat on the grass beside his headstone and talked to him like he was still there. "I did it, Dad. I saved the company. I exposed the corruption. I made sure your legacy became something worth preserving." She paused, wiping away tears. "Brandon, Christine, and Tyler are paying for what they did. Not because I was cruel, but because actions have consequences. You taught me that." The wind rustled through the trees, and Maya could almost hear her father's voice. "I knew you could do it. I always knew." She stood up, brushing grass from her skirt. As she walked back to her car, her phone rang. It was Margaret Chen. "Maya, you need to see this. Tyler's trying to appeal his conviction. Claims he was coerced into participating in the fraud." Maya sighed. "Do we need to do anything?" "No. The evidence is too strong, and his own testimony contradicts his appeal. It'll be denied within a week. I just wanted you to know so you're not blindsided." "Thanks, Margaret. Let me know when it's officially dismissed." Even now, months later, her siblings were still trying to escape consequences, still refusing to take responsibility, still believing they could manipulate their way out of the mess they'd created. They never learned, and that was their ultimate downfall. 2 years after the scandal broke, Maya Bennett stood in the lobby of the newly opened Bennett Community Center in downtown Hartford. It was built on land she'd purchased with her inheritance, in a neighborhood that had been neglected for decades. The center offered job training, child care, computer classes, and mentorship programs for at-risk youth. At the ribbon-cutting ceremony, the mayor called her a beacon of integrity in an age of corporate greed. Former foster kids who'd benefited from her scholarship programs spoke about how she'd changed their lives. Business leaders praised her for proving that ethical practices and profitability weren't mutually exclusive. Brandon, Christine, and Tyler weren't there, obviously. Brandon was serving year 3 of his sentence. Christine had been released early for good behavior, but was living in obscurity in Arizona, working as a receptionist, her former life of luxury completely gone. Tyler had violated his probation by gambling again and was currently serving out the remainder of his original sentence. Their father's legacy had been redeemed, but not by them. By the girl they'd called a charity case. As the ceremony ended and people began to leave, Maya stood alone in the center's main room, looking at the wall of photographs. Pictures of kids who'd been helped, families who'd been housed, businesses that had been launched. This was what wealth was supposed to do: create opportunities, build communities, lift people up. Her phone buzzed one last time. A text from an unknown number. "I hope you're happy. You destroyed our family." Christine, still playing the victim after everything. Maya typed back, "I didn't destroy your family. I revealed who you really were. There's a difference. Don't contact me again." She blocked the number and put her phone away. The truth was, Maya had learned something profound through this entire experience. Revenge wasn't about destruction. Real revenge was about transformation. It was about taking the pain someone inflicted on you and using it as fuel to become something greater than they ever imagined. Her siblings had tried to reduce her to nothing, to send her back to the poverty and powerlessness of her childhood. Instead, they'd awakened something fierce inside her, something that refused to be diminished. They'd wanted her to disappear. She'd become impossible to ignore. And that, Maya realized, was the sweetest victory of all. She walked out of the community center into the bright afternoon sun, her head high, her conscience clear, her future unlimited. Somewhere in the world, 3 bitter people were blaming her for their downfall, refusing to see that they'd authored their own destruction. But that wasn't Maya's problem anymore. She'd won not by becoming like them, but by refusing to. She'd won by being exactly who her father had raised her to be: strong, ethical, unbreakable, and free. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt dismissed or underestimated, subscribe to the channel. Because Maya's story proves that your background doesn't determine your future, your resilience does. Brandon, Christine, and Tyler had everything handed to them and threw it away through greed and cruelty. Maya had nothing and built an empire through intelligence and integrity. They destroyed themselves, trying to destroy her. She became everything they could never be, not through revenge, but through refusing to let their cruelty define her worth. The best victory isn't making your enemies suffer. It's building a life so successful, so meaningful, so filled with purpose that their opinion of you becomes completely irrelevant. Maya Bennett learned that lesson the hard way, and in learning it, she became unstoppable.